Hi there guys, this is day one of week 3, and as you probably picked up in the hint when I said you need some string, week 3 is going to be knots, maybe knots, whips, lashings, whatever, but it's going to be knots predominantly. Not tons and tons and tons of things. I mean, I've got to admit, I do not know a book full of knots, and the simple reality is I've never needed to know a book full of knots. However, there's some of the knots that I do use on a regular basis, that there's certain little things I've learned that I will say as I'm going along. What this isn't is a knot. This is not going to be, not like as I've done with the other stuff, it's not going to be a knot tying video like the others weren't how to do. The whole point is have a look, through the next week. It's for you to look on YouTube, look in your books, look over, and every now and then pick some different knots, or think about the things you're going to do and what might be a useful knot to use. Give it a go tying it. If it turns out to be really complicated, or when you're actually practicing it, it doesn't work, to move on to something else. So that's the whole point of this week. It's to do a bit of that. A bit of practicing in some of the more technically knots, and then possibly even learning a couple of new knots. I've got a couple of knots that I have used occasionally that I actually really like, that I can never remember how to bloody tie. So that's the sort of thing I was going to practice. It's literally not until I've just actually walked out here now, I've been waiting for the sun to go down to cool down a little bit, because I've had, trying to do my bits of jobs to do, that I've suddenly thought, shit, the one thing I never thought about, again, I mean, I've got my cordages ready, I've got my knot book is there, just to make sure I've got an idea what I'm doing. The one thing I didn't think about was how I was going to film it. Again, funnily enough, that with my videos, isn't it? So I'm not too sure what I'm going to do, so there might be... what I'll probably have to do is just keep moving the camera around and just putting it to where I'm going to be doing it, and obviously I'll cut the bits of the moving around and all the rest of it up and just do the bits in between. But what do you need for this week? As long as you've got your cordage ready and things like that, predominantly what you're going to need for the next week is, obviously I've got a bit of standard paracord and a bit of thin cordage, so there's 2 types of cordage. Doesn't have to be anything major, doesn't even have to be paracord, just a couple of types of cordage. The one thing with paracord, the one thing I would say is I'm starting to quite like, I've been starting to use a little bit of natural cordage and bank line, but it's harder to get knots out of, so it's not great to practice with. So the paracord and the nylon, as long as you don't really wrench down on the knot, it's a bit easier to get out, so it's better to practice with. So a bit of a tip there. Also, when you cut it, just remember to seal the ends a little bit. So that's what I've done. So I'll give this a go. Now the general idea is to pick a knot and do it a number of times and just see what works, what doesn't, how quickly you can do it, how quickly you can't, and things like that. Bearing in mind, if you do a knot and think that's really easy, that's actually probably really good when you're cold and you're wet and you're in a rush. So the sun is in a bit of a funny place. Now what I've also done is here I've got one post for my decking, and here is the other post for my decking, which means I can also simulate doing things like setting up a basher, setting up a hammock, those kind of knots where I want something to go between 2 posts, because one might be a quick release knot or not. So we'll give that a crack and see how things go. Right guys, so I'll give this a go and see how things go. So I've set this up as best as I can, about middling. First thing I'm going to do is a knot, I believe, I don't know the other name for it other than the Juvenk knot. I'm a big believer in quick release knots. I love quick release knots, and apart from a couple of situations where obviously you don't want anything quickly releasing, I've not really found a problem with any of them. But anyway, we'll crack on here. And I suppose the difficulty with this week is there's 1,000,001 knots out there, everything from fishing knots to climbing knots to camp knots and all the rest of it. So realistically, I suppose, maybe the challenge for you might be through this week to think, right, are there any knots that I use quite regularly that are a little bit tricky to use? So I'll practice them. Are there any knots that I actually would like to learn? So you can learn them. And then through the research, are there any knots you've actually not had and tried before, and therefore give them a go? And like we've done with the other things, day 1, practice slightly, the ones that you personally find a little bit, a little bit fiddly. Don't have to be difficult, but maybe just fiddly, so you get a bit of practice of them. Then in a day or 2, move on to ones that that you've not tried before, about, you've not really used, and then obviously a bit later on might be just moving on to knots. So the whole point though is to tie each knot a number of times, not just to do it once. So every knot, don't forget this is 7 of 6, every knot needs tying a number of times. So So I'll crack on, and the first thing I'm going to do is the event. So basically, your long piece, which is where you're going to have your basher or your hammock, not basher, your basher or your tarp or whatever you want to call it, will run on here. So that's this side. So if you've got the long piece running on your left, that's the left hand you use. So if the long piece is on your left side, you use your left hand. If the long piece is on your right side, you use your right hand. Here my long piece is on my left hand, so I use my left hand. You lay both pieces over your hand, you fold it over the top, and as I've said, if this is difficult to see, there's 101 videos out there, so it's more about if I find things that I think are little hints and tips, I'll give them, rather than this being a knot tying video, because you might not even want to use the knots I use. But it's all about recording the journey and getting you practicing. So anyway, that goes over. You've got the loop over there, then you have a loop. The loop is here. Get hold of the short end and bring the knot together. Now, one of the things with the event that I have found is you'll see people go whoa, whoa, slide them together. Always have a look at the knot up here, and if that knot is a bit loose, they haven't cinched it up properly. So the idea is bring it nice and tight here. Keep hold of your knot. So I've got hold of the loop here, that's the loop, and I've got hold of the knot, and I slide it up and slide it on. Keep that knot nice and tight. And then when you put some weight on it, then this knot stays nice and small here, and it's that keeping that knot nicely cinched up that holds everything together. Now what you can do is you can put a stick through the loop here. You put a stick through the loop and pull that tight, and that holds everything nice and tight. Also sometimes with paracord you might even get the effect I've got now, which is when you pull it through, it forms a little pigtail there, and it holds itself nice and tight, and what you've got there is a knot that I'm putting all my weight on. That's not going anywhere. Then if you can just pull a little bit, once the weight's off it, it will pull out, and you've got a quick release knot. So that's that one, and it's often that cinching it up and holding it all together. That's the bit that I find a bit fiddly sometimes, especially when you're a bit cold or a bit tired. So here we go. Ah, there you saw it. Well, you might not see it, you might see the cord just pull a little bit, and it just opened up a bit there, and that was because I hadn't quite got the tension on it before I pulled it tight, and that can actually work loose. So remember what I said, it doesn't have to be difficult, just a little bit fiddly. And what you've got to do, like the one thing I found with these, until you've got all the loose line out of them, all the loose line, you've got to try and keep that weight on there until you've got all the loose line out of it. Now once you've got that as tight as it will go, then your knot will hold without slipping. And that's the thing there. That won't move now because I've got all the loose line out and held the knot. If you leave some loose line in there, when you're trying to cinch it up, your knot will open up. Quick pull, off you hopefully. Yep. So the idea here, so make sure I don't block the camera, is you go into the other tree, or post, or stump, or whatever it is, and round she goes. Then you take it over the line, pull it tight, go around, and then how do you fasten that? I've seen 1,000,001 ways of doing this, but I find just by going on the inside once, and then forming a loop on the outside, she's done. That's going nowhere. And again, quick release. Here we go, pull that round. So you've got it going up one side, round the tree, down the other. Take it over or under, that really doesn't matter. Pull it tight. Take it back around the tree, or stump, or sapling. And then from here, I'm not sure exactly how well you can see this, but I go up between the cord and the tree. Pull that nice and tight, and go back to the front. And just pull yourself a loop through. There she goes. If you're worried about it again, you can put a stick in here and pull it up tight, and it'll just hold it if it's going to have a windy night. Not mistaken, if I remember rightly, they say it takes 25 goes to learn a knot, 250 goes so that you really remember it, and 2,500 so you never forget it. Oh, that must be very bright, quite scary. Right, here we have a thinner piece of cord, so just a bit thinner. And then what I'm going to do here, I'll use this one, I'm going to tie a slip knot. Okay, so basically we have the cord which is going back to the tent, goes over here, and what we do is we go 1 and twice and 3 times, and then over the top and round, form a quick release loop, pull everything nice and tight, and what you have is a prusik type setup that's not going anywhere, and when you're done, off she comes. Simple as. So goes to the tent, I take it round, sometimes only do 2, but I take it round 3, there we go, over the top. So I've gone over the top of the line here. Again, I'm sure there's lots of places where you can see these knots, and people will break it down with much better camera skills than I have. But there we go. And then what you have is you have a non-slip knot. That can be used to tension your basher up, or to tie your tent down. 1, 2, 3, over the top, and she goes. Form the loop, pull it tight, and like I say, that could be running along your ridge line, tightening your basher there, or up to your tent pole. Another thing you can do with this, if you imagine now that this is, this, I'm just going to use this as an imaginary tent peg. So I've put my cord around an imaginary tent peg. There we go, that's the edge of my tent peg, so that's what I'm doing. So you've got a long piece which is going up to your tent, a short piece you've taken around your tent peg, and you do the same again. This time you go a 1, a 2, a 3, going towards the cordage. So I wrap 3 round the main line going towards the cordage. I'll then come back up to the top, taking that round, tight. There we go. Pull that knot tight. There we go. And then what you have is, if you pull the tension off the pole, off of the peg, you can, it's basically a slip knot. There we go. Take the tension off, you can slide it shorter, and on she goes. So again, it can be used that, you could imagine that this particular loop here, there we are, that particular loop could be going around a tent peg, could be going around a stick, it could be going around a pole, it could be going around a branch, it could be going around anything. And it basically gives you a very quick to tie slip knot, which isn't going anywhere, very quick to get off, to shorten a piece of cord. So I'm going to leave this one on here, and I'm going to take the other side off. Boom. There we go. So although I've still got the U-bent tied here, but that doesn't really matter. But you have a long length of cord, and what you do is you form a loop in your length of cord, and you pull a loop through it. That's here. Alright, and then what you do is, by pulling the length down as far as you want it to go, try and get you out. Here we are. Oh, I better do that a bit shorter, or else you're never going to see anything. Yeah, so I've got a long loop here which is shortening my line. There we are, that's shortening the line. And then by putting another loop top ways into this one, and there's a name for this, I'll dig the names out as I go on through the week. There we go, shorten out to there. And then what you've basically done is you've shortened your length of line without having to cut it. There we go. I believe there's a couple of ways of doing that. I'm trying to think, the first way I was ever shown, I think, was to just basically put a loop, and the loop goes into there. Like that. No, I'm forgetting that. No, there was a different way. I was taught years ago, but I just found this one. I just found this one to be easier. Is to use that first one, it's the loop. The second one goes back on itself, through, and then you've shortened your cord. And the idea of that one, obviously, I'll just pan you out of it if I can. There we go. You can take a long length of cord and shorten it down. You're not having to cut your piece of string or anything like that. There we go. But again, take a bit of weight off them, tweak them out, and it's gone. and my battery's going to go, so I think I'm going to have to film this in 2 pieces. My battery's going to go very shortly. But, overhand. No, it's got to go there. It's working. The next one I want to learn is the trucker's hitch. This is actually quite a new one on me, is the trucker's hitch. Now I'm going to try and see if I can get, I'm going to first go from memory. And I know you form a loop. Pull that through. I think it's the same sort of thing again. No, that's not true. Right. Bit far away there. I'll squat. And then, guys, battery ran out a bit last night. So, I mean, a bit of a recap. I got to, obviously, this will add on to the next one, but I'd done the Uvenk and then the tie-off hitch on the other side. I then did the sliding knot, both around the taut line, which would be the ridge line, and also on the side, which then means you can use it on a peg or on a post. I then went on to do the sheep bend, but actually checking in the book when I was looking for some other knots, I think I was doing it slightly wrong. See, this is where you practice them. Right, loop, one piece down, that bit goes there, chuff. That bit goes that way. There we go, and then you put a loop, inside loop on that side, which goes the other way. There we go. And there we have the sheep bend. So I put a hitch and a loop, rather than having 2 loops on each side. So I'm going to do that one again. So that goes that way, drops down. Whatever length, you know, whatever you're wanting to get rid of, that's set up, whatever you wanted to get rid of, that's what goes into that top loop. Ease it together, get to the bottom, you're doing a loop on the bottom, that way, fingers in, and there we have sheep bend, I believe. Am I calling it the right name? I've got my book down here, I'm letting off. Where's the book for the sheep bend? Oh. Sheep, it's a sheep shank, not a sheep bend. Sheep shank. Once more, out to there. The bit you want to shorten. That side. This is the point, but I said about how many times you've got to do a knot to learn it. There we go. Very tight. And there we have our length of cord shortened, and obviously you can always put a little toggle into these bits here. So yeah, so get a bit happier. Done that last time. Do this once more. That tight. And there we go. So every time you do it, you remember it, you get a little bit better. That's the whole point. So I'm not trying to learn, I'm not going to learn 6 different knots every day. I'll keep doing the knots until I'm comfortable with them, and then tomorrow, hopefully, I'll see how well it... Bow line. Excuse me, I've got a string in my teeth. So the next one was the bow line. So the bow line, the loop. Get some cordage, easiest to do it on the end. You form a loop. And if your cord goes onto the top, you go up, down, down. And there we go. I can generally, I've done this knot for a long time, I can generally do it quite well, but I always forget when I'm forming the loop, does the loop go on the top or does the loop go on the bottom? And that's about it, I always forget, which just slows it down a little bit. And that's not very good when it's shitty weather and you're cold and you're tired. So again, I put it in the left hand, loop to the middle, form my loop, and then go up, down, and I'll have to take that thumb knot out in a second, but, and there we go, sheep bend. Yep, so the thing to watch with this one, as I found when you're doing it, then you form your loop here, there we go, then you push your cord up, then you pull everything round. You've got to make sure you get this all the way to the top and then just tighten it up, and tighten it up, nice and steady, and keep everything where it's meant to be. If you don't and that slides over, what happens is you end up with a straight piece of cord and it won't actually grip, it ends up all over the place and things pull in and slide all over the place. So it's one of those, a bit like the Uvenk, keeping hold of where the actual knot is that little trick between making it work and it just constantly failing, and I kept losing it and I couldn't work out why, and that's the reason why. So, yeah, and push it up, keep everything there, you've got your little loop here, pull everything through your loop, keeping everything nice and tight, bring that up above, so it's up and above, that comes up there, and then just ease that down, and ease it all in together. Double pegging point, there you go. Boom. Okay, so what I've got now is another new one on me. This is a harness hitch, and basically it's for putting a loop part way into a piece of line that won't slide up and down. They use it apparently for tying men onto ropes and all sorts of things. So basically this was, and it took me a while to get this as well. Turn your hand over, turn it all the way around and keep going until you end up with something, and I'm just off the camera there, sorry guys, that looks a bit like that. So what you're doing is you're getting your hand here, you're turning it all the way around, right the way on top of itself. All the way around, right the way on top of itself. Until I caught onto that, I couldn't quite get it. I couldn't get the knot around it, all the way around and back onto itself. Then you put your fingers through. You put your fingers through here, grab that one, just slide it in, tighten it up, and you've got a loop to put something on. So if you've got a washing line or hang things on, or all sorts of pot hangers or whatever, and it pulls out pretty easy. So again, all the way around. Really quick way of putting a load of loops onto a piece of cord. Again. Oh, there we go. Oops. That's the sign, that's the tension. So yeah, pretty good. Goes out reasonably easy, as long as it doesn't go too tight. All the way around, on top of itself. And through there. Through. Leaves you with a loop. Possibly useful around camp. Little favourite of mine for tying cord together. Sheet bend. Around here, let's just have a look. There we go. Just form your loop. She goes up, all the way around, and then under itself. Slide it down. There we go. Good way for joining two pieces of cord, and especially if you've got two pieces that are different lengths. There she goes. You go up, all the way around, back on itself. Now what you can do here to make it more secure is go around twice. Like that. Oops, you're not meant to pull it that hard. I pulled it too hard and it slid off. Yeah, little tip, don't pull it too hard. Leave plenty of tail on the end. Don't skimp yourself, don't try and tie it like down here. Get up there and it doesn't make any difference. Easier to tie. Up, round. One. Two. Tight. Easy down. There we go. That's better. Right, so once more on that one. Single one. Hold it up, round, pull it through. Make sure it stays on the cord. There she goes. All you tie your shoelaces with, that's never a bad one. Hold your shoes together, it'll hold most other things together. The leg's just falling off the tripod. That's what you get for getting a tripod out the bargain bin. There we go. Now then, let me see here. Yep. Quick one from yesterday, the Uvenk. Long piece on your right hand side, long piece on my left hand side, which is whichever side of the long piece is in, that's the hand you use. Round it goes. over the top, get a little piece of cord. And what I said, hold that knot nice and tight, hold your knot there, and slide your knot up. Hold that knot nice and tight, and she'll keep nice and firm like that. Boop. There she goes. Yep, so long piece on my left side, use my left hand. Around the fingers, you go over the top, all the way over the top, and grab that loose end. Pull that loose end through, pull it nice and tight there, that's pulled tight. Get hold of it and pull. Nice and steady if you're using nylon because it gets hot. Up she goes. Nice and firm, that knot stays nice and tight together. Then off she comes. One more. There we go. It's a bit of knot practice for tonight. Just as a bit of an extra because they're not making it's not all that, you know. So guys, just as a bit of an add-on today, like I say, keep doing little bits and pieces and hopefully the knots don't take that long. What I've gathered here is I gathered a piece of eucalypt bark. Well, I don't know which species it is, but I just thought it's supposed to burn well because apparently it's why they keep having forest fires in Australia. But I've never tried it before, never touched it before, so for the first go, I've just got a piece here and I've tried breaking it up. It doesn't seem to powder, it crunches up. It doesn't seem to powder up, so it's not going really fine. Which isn't very good if you're looking for a, for a tinder, especially for a spark. But I thought, right, well, I'll try this, and we'll just see if it takes a flame. And if not, maybe I'll try a little bit of a highlighter, just as a bit of just one-off extra thing to do because the knots don't take very long. And I've never done this before. Let's see. First thing is we'll see if it'll take a flame. Well, it's definitely not bursting into flames. I mean, if you put the test on, if you put a flame onto something and you go 1, 2, 3, well 1.2.3.4, it should be in flames. If it's not in flames by then, it's not a very good. It's definitely not kindling. Definitely not tinder. I mean, but maybe it's not very good kindling either. 1.2.3.4.5. Oh well, it's starting to burn, but only just. Not too good there, so not very promising. Right, we'll try a little bit of a firelighter on there. We'll see how that goes. If I tuck that into there, because that's where the... Oops, here we go. There's a lot of flame, but how much is the firelighter? We'll soon see. Give that a little while and we'll see how that goes. So obviously, if this is good, there's a potential it can pick up big long strips. I'll just grab one. It comes off the tree naturally in big long strips like that. That'll roll up. Very dry. Obviously, that'd be great for just breaking up, sticking into a Kelly kettle or a little hobo stove or something like that. So I was, I thought, well, if it'll light with a bit of a firelighter and burn, good fuel. I don't think it's going to though. It's smoky and it's hot. And it does burn, but not particularly readily. It definitely doesn't look like it's going to be what you would call your go. It's not going to be my. They're not going to be my go-to sticks, which is a shame because they're nice and light and they're really easy to carry and they don't powder up. But no. Definitely burning, but they need a bit of heat. Definitely need a bit of heat to get going. Seems to be okay now though. No, I won't give up yet. I won't give up on them yet. We'll give it a try in the old hobo or on the Kelly kettle, something like that, and see how it goes, eh? Good, got a fire lighter and plenty of fuel in there. Well, they're going now, but definitely not kindling. Definitely not kindling material, a bit fussy for that. Not unless you've got plenty of good fire lighters and other stuff to go with it. Tell you what, that's giving off some bloody heat. Oh well, good one. Catch you tomorrow. Hi there guys, this is day 4 for me. Just a bit of a recap because it's been this video's a little bit disjointed. My battery ran out on Monday, and so I just finished off doing a bit of practice. Tuesday I filmed, that went okay. I showed a bit of a recap of what I did. Yesterday I didn't do any filming. I've had a bit of a rolling programme with the dentist sorting things out because I've had a long time when I haven't gone to the dentist. I keep going regularly, it doesn't go away. But yeah, so by the time I got home last night, it was about 7:15 at night last night when I got home from the dentist. And I was a bit like that, and you wouldn't have understood a word I said because I'm a bloody mouth anyway. So I got home and all I really felt like doing after a day at work and that was sitting on the couch. But what I did do was to actually, I just pulled up the, sat on the chair, watching the telly in front of me, pulled up the coffee table and used the leg on the coffee table and practiced the knots. I also, although I've used it before, but I could never really remember it, I've brushed up and tightened up on the sheep shank and relearned the trucker's hitch and also a new one which is called the mooring hitch, and I'll show you those in a minute, and I'm just going to have a little practice. That's all I'm going to do, is just going to go through all of them. I feel I'm getting a lot slicker and a lot better at the knots I've tied, especially things like the double bowline or on a bind. That's I've got the knack of that now. So I'll have a quick flip and just do 1 or 2 of each of them, or else the videos get really long. So yeah, it's like, as I said at the beginning, it's one of those things where, you know, I started off with a few that I used to use on a regular basis. I've looked through the books. Don't go mad on knots. You realistically you don't need hundreds. But I was actually looking for something that I could use to cinch things down with, which is the trucker's hitch. And also often when something I do here, which I've not been in the bush anything like as much as I would like to, but when I have done, it does rain a lot. The floor is wet a lot, and it's a bit manky. So I'm tending to put my hang my gear, like my pack and things like that, in a tree. So I was just wanting something, a quick knot, quick release knot that I could put on my pack and just fasten it to a branch. So that's the mooring hitch. That's ideal for this. And again, all quick release sort of knots. So what I will do is I will just crack on, go through the knots that I've done up to press, and show you where I'm at next. I will crack on. Right, so I've got my gear together. I'm still struggling to find an angle where you could actually probably see what I'm doing and get me in. But you'll just have to settle for the ever-expanding middle. I would just like to point out, anybody back in the UK who knows me, this is not a belly. It's a fuel tank for a hunting machine, and you need it in the bloody hills over here. Right, so basically, start from the beginning as usual, and what we do is we have the Uvenk. Goes round, over, tight, and down. Getting pretty slick. The opposite side is, there we go, run that round, and that side, go to the inside, quick release hitch, and that's what I call my tie-off hitch. Again, not even, you know, this is the difference. That's a bit of a fiddly one to tie if you haven't got a nice tight line. So the fact that I'm actually finding I can do it even on a completely slack line shows I'm improving, and that's the whole point. You know, you want to get to the point where you don't have to think about these things. You look pretty slick. Okay. I haven't called it. What I found it's called the mooring hitch. Now, this goes round something a bit like the Uvenk knot. Now, what you do with this one is you form a loop, and the string goes underneath here. I hope you can see this. I mean, I'm sure you can get a notebook out, but the loop goes underneath. Then what you do is offer the line up and bring the other piece through, and the actual knot here does look very much like a Uvenk knot, and then you just slide it up. But what I'm finding, even without holding this and being really, it seems to hold together a lot better than the Gevenk. And the reality is, when you've done it a few times, you know, it's actually, there we go, slides up and it's just as quick to tie. I suppose the thing with the Gevenk is one of the things, because it's used in a really, really cold climate, it's easy to do with just all your fingers and a thumb. However, this one becomes a little bit more difficult, but you can lay it over, use your thumb, put all your hand through, pull the cord through, pull it tight, and pull it up. So in fact you can do the same thing. So that's a knot used in the UK, and apparently it's quite common for mooring up boats and canal boats. So we actually have a very similar knot to something that's been popularised by Mr. Mears as being learnt out in Siberia. And we had our own there in the UK, and probably anybody who moors boats over in New Zealand and everywhere else. And it's a virtually identical knot. Okay, and sliding knot. Round it goes. Inside itself. 1, 2, 3. Back over. Pull a loop through so it's a fast release. There we go. And sliding knot. There she goes. Both ways. Awesomely dawsomely. The sheep shank. And again, we pull that to there. There we go. Take whatever length of cord you want to short. Push one end through there and just pull it down tight on itself and nip it with your thumb. Grab the bottom end. Thumbs and fingers. Pull it through. Teeth always come in handy. It's the third hand. There we go. And we have a sheep shank. Line is shortened very, very easily, very, very neat. Like I say, pop a stick in and you can make it even more secure. We have the sheep bend. So you take your thicker piece and bend it over. Then you take your thinner piece, bring it up and round and back on itself. There we go. And then just bring it together nice and slow so that it has time to notch up without going underneath. And obviously your double sheep bend is exactly the same. Oh, it's exactly the same, but this time you just take it round again and it just gives you that little bit more security. Excellent way of joining two pieces of rope together without permanently attaching them, or a thicker piece to a thinner piece. But always take your thinner piece round, not your thicker piece. If you try and use a thicker piece, it tends to bunch up and it curls up on the thinner and it doesn't work. You can never remember to do it. The trucker's hitch. Right, I'm going to pop over the Gevenk off for this one. There we go. So basically, what we have is we have a length of cord. You form your loop. There we go. Oops, that way. Put a loop through it and bring it up tight. So you've got a little loop here. Then the other piece goes around something. I'm not going to tie it to my camera, but it goes around a tree, a stump, a peg on your trailer or anything else, and you push it through the loop. So you've got a little loop here that goes to whatever you want to fasten it to, and then you pull it tight, and then a tie-off hitch at the top secures everything. And I could never remember how to do that, but I got that done pretty much first time. The other one I did was the bowline, and basically on the top. And this was one I always used to take 2 or 3, you know, I don't know, I didn't often use it that much, but you know, I always seemed to take 2 or 3 goes to do. First time now, I've ingrained it in just by doing it and doing it and doing it. I've ingrained it in which way the loop goes, you know, how to form the loop or whatever else. And the same sort of thing, I'm sure if you know, figure of 8 is basically a good way of putting a loop on the end. You can see the 8, hopefully there, it looks like an 8. Much better than just doing a granny knot, which is basically just you know, you just basically pull it round as if you're doing a thumb knot. If you take the line and go all the way over and then back up, that figure of 8 doesn't tend to bite in as much and it keeps more strength in your line. A standard granny knot will drop about 50% off your line. That drops probably, well, I think it's 30, 20, 30, or is it 80 for a granny knot? But anyway, so all the way over and back up through the loop gives you the 8. And the other one I did was the figure of 8 on a bite to give you like the double pegging point. So you form your loop, you bring that through, and what I've learned, if I tighten all that quite close together and bring that, so you've just got a little loop there, and what you need is enough room to put that through, and then pull your loop to the top, and then when you pull these, oops, get them both together, down, sits lovely. That's what I wasn't doing. I wasn't quite taking my time to do that. So I'll show you again. This is a figure of 8 on a, it's a figure of 8 on a bite, but it's a double figure of 8 on a bite. And basically, you form yourself a loop, bring your rope through, and bring it all the way up to there. So that's where you're at. Then put your rope through, bring it over to the top, and bring it down to there. And then you've got your 2 cords, which you can use for double pegging out or anything you want to do. You see, a little bit, just by doing it and doing it and doing it, I learnt the little knack of how you should do it. Another one which I used to know, and I've completely forgotten, they're called the archer's knot. And basically for this is you do a thumb knot. If you've got your cord, all you're going to do is, if you're going to do a normal thumb knot, but rather than pulling it all through, you don't. You just pull it to here, and then you put a thumb knot in there. And then what you've got is quite an easy to pull out knot, but great for putting on the end of a bow drill. Very, very quick to tie. You can even do the thumb knot first because that stops it pulling through, and then basically all you do is you go as if you're just going to tie. You go as if you're just going to tie a knot in, but don't pull it all the way through, and it cinches up. And that's called a bowyer's knot, I believe. So bring it round, pull it through, up she comes to there, and then just gives you a nice loop for the top of your bow, or for a bow drill or anything like that. Nice little knot there. And then the other knots I actually do, I'll show them another night, but the other couple of knots I tend to use are the, which I do know because I do fish quite regular, are the half blood, the tucked half blood and the fisherman's knot, so I do use those quite a lot, but that'll do for tonight, so see you tomorrow. Hi guys, day 5. Like I said, don't give up. It's this constant repetition, you know, it's that's the whole point of how this has been set up. You can go on a, like I say, a bush. Oh heck! Don't tell the most beloved, but I've just seen a rat go trundling along my garden and dive into a hole. Let's go see if we can find it. Ah. And there is the hole, right there, right in the middle of my garden, right in the middle of my grass all over the place. There we go. I know what I'll be doing in a little while. I think there'll be a little welcoming committee going out for that chappie. Yes, I've a couple of different sorts of rats over here, and there's some what are called tree rats, and they're about sort of down here. Literally about the size of a mouse. So you know, really just literally you put mouse traps out and they're just about that size. You know, yeah, 1.5 times the size of a mouse really. That bugger wasn't. That was a brown rat. Not a huge one. Well, you know, body was only like, you know, maybe this. So, but anyway, better do something about that. Ooh. Right. So like I said, don't give in. But that was a bit of an interlude there, wasn't it? Never spotted that little hole before. So anyway, I'll crack on. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to run through my set of knots. I'm getting quite comfortable with them now, including the ones. And what I would suggest by this time of the week, you're running through them all once or twice. If you feel really comfortable and you know you can almost do it with your eyes shut, then great. If not, do 2 or 3. I'm just going to go through each of the knots once because that makes it easier for filming. Then there's a couple of them I'm going to read. I'm going to do a bit more because I haven't quite got them into my head. There's a couple of the newer ones like the mooring hitch, and I'm trying to think what else. The mooring hitch I was struggling with, and possibly the bowline already tied round something like I did. So I can tie it freehand to form the loop, but then doing it around something when it's turned around is a bit different. So anyway, I will crack on. Oh, and then I'm going to do a bit of a feather stick with my new knife. My new light hunter knife I've just made. Just finished on it's on the other video. The other video out probably out before this one. So anyway, here we go. Start off. As always, we'll start off with the bank. Oh, I might even do the mooring hitch actually. Put that around there, like that. Let's try the mooring hitch, just something a bit different. Put it on there, that goes to there. There we go. Since it doesn't slide quite as easy, so I think I make that a bit tight, so I need it to slide. There's the one downside to it, it doesn't slide once you've tightened it up. There we go, slide it in, and tighten it up, and she's on. Learn something else new. Don't tighten the mooring hitch until you've got it where you want it. Just going to do a tie-off hitch at this side. There we go. Bit boring that tie-off hitch, but it's an easy one. That's one I don't tend to forget. So we'll do the sliding knot around something. So here we go. Back on itself. 3. Back forward. And form a loop. I like to always form a loop because that then, what that does is that gives me quick release knot. So there we are. And you can make that longer, or keeping it reasonably straight, a bit shorter. Let it go, and it'll just put a kink in. So that's that one. Okay, a sheep shank. Shortening a piece of cord. And then just form a loop there. Pull that through. You see there, I nearly slipped back into my old habit, which was doing it wrong. So there we are, that's that one. And you've got that one. Oops, form the loop. There she goes. Now, first time. Again, because I've got it wrong, I'm making myself do it again. Keep on doing it till you get it. Don't do it till you get it right, do it till you don't get it wrong. That's what my dad used to say. Bit fiddly with this thinner string. There we go. Okay, trucker's hitch. Right. Form yourself a loop. Put a loop through it. So there, you end up with a loop. Put it on there. And this goes down to wherever you want to fasten it to. That, and it pulls tight, so that's it. And obviously you'd tie that off for that. I'd just tie that off probably with a tie-off hitch that I use or anything like that. I'd just tie that off there, keep it nice and tight, and that would obviously be fastened around whatever it was you wanted to fasten it to put a bit of tension on it. I'll do that again for you. So you've formed a loop, put that through so it grips, and you've basically formed yourself a loop. And you take a piece of your cord, you take it round whatever you want to fasten, like your peg, or a pole, or a tree, or anything else. You bob that round, and then by pulling that nice and tight, you can get a good bit of tension on there. Good knot is that. Handy knot. I'm glad I relearned that. Okay, and a bowline. The one I know I can do, because I kept doing this because I always get this the wrong way around. So what you do here is form your loop on the top, and if it's on the top it goes up, down, down, oops, down, up, down. There we go. And it pulls tight, and you can make a loop of any size you want. Big loop for big people, small loop for small people. There we go. So that's the bowline. That's what I'm doing there. The knot for the bow. Remember that one? Really, really simple overhand knot, but rather than pulling, so you're going to do basically like a first part of a granny knot. Yeah, but rather than pulling the whole thing through, you just pull a little bit of it through. Nip it up, and then you put a thumb knot on your loose end, which then slides up. So basically you can make that as large or as small as you want simply by altering where you put that knot on there. When you put the knot on the end, so if I put a knot here, I'll get a small loop. If I put the knot at the end, I get a big loop. So a really quick way, that way, of fastening one of the ends of your, like a bow saw, as well as obviously a bow, as in archery bow. Keep an eye out for that pesky rat. Right. Figure of 8 on a bite. First figure of 8 is quite simple. Form a loop all the way around and back up, and you get something that looks like an 8. So that's why it's called a figure of 8. Much better than a thumb knot. Reduces the strength of your cord much less than just doing a simple, if you just did a simple overhand knot like that, that reduces your line massively. A figure of 8 is much more efficient, doesn't damage your line anywhere near as much, and it's also much easier to get out. It doesn't tend to bed in quite so much. And there we go. So you get that little, push it out a little bit, that little number 8 there. Then we've got the double number of 8. And what I said, I quite fancy this for really windy days and double tying things down. So it's exactly the same. You form yourself a loop, and then what you do is you push your cord through, leaving that little loop there. Look, so you've pushed it through the hole. So form a loop, formed a loop, push it through the hole like so, and then you take the other end, which is at the top. You see that little end at the top there? And that just goes over. Now, keeping that nice and steady, because that's if you start to flap around with this, that's when it doesn't tighten up properly. If you do it nice and steady, it tightens up until hold, and that gives you a double pegging out point, or you can hang 2 things off of a tree at the same time. Anything like that. If you're having to get somebody down a hill, it forms a much better seat. There we go. That's that one. Clove hitch. Very handy little knot, the clove hitch. I don't know if I did this one yesterday, but you basically, clove hitch is very easy. You form a loop to the inside, and you get the one, and you form another loop to the inside. You put it around something, and you pull it tight, and you get that. It's quite a simple knot. All you do is, the right hand makes a loop to the inside, the left hand makes a loop. It does make a loop, do as you're told. Make a loop to the inside. There we go. And that's it, pull it tight, and what you see is, you should see that. There you go. See? Now, another version of that, I'm just going to pull it a bit shorter, so I've got to. So basically, you've done your clove hitch. So you've done your knot to the inside, and you've done your knot to the inside, and you put your clove hitch on, which is like this. Then if you take your loose end and go over the top of that one, so you go over top of the opposite one and back round, so it goes there, look, and then just cinch it up nice and steady. What you get then is a constrictor knot, where the more pressure that's put on, the tighter that knot gets, and it doesn't tend to come off. More difficult to get off, so be careful what you're doing, but if it's something you don't want sliding away, that one little tweak to what is quite a handy little knot, so that one little tweak makes a clove hitch a constrictor knot. And mooring hitch. I've done the mooring hitch. I better do the U-vent. I'll go round, run that, over you go. Pull it tight. And what I said, keep it nice and tight, keep that knot nice and tight there, slide it up, and then bed it in. And there she goes. That's the only tip really with the U-vent, is keeping it nice and tight. And a quick one here for timber. This is called a timber hitch, so it's very good for tying lots and lots of little pieces of, if you've got a load of pieces of wood or whatever, lots of pieces. Guess what I'm going to do in a minute. Right? And very, very simple, but it's really good if you're using withies, vines, natural cordage, because there's no tight bend on anything, it doesn't kick into itself. So it's really good when you use anything like that. And basically, all you do is you go round a piece, like that, and then literally just wrap it round at least 3 times, probably 3 or 4 times. You just pull that around 3 or 4 times like that, and then just gently just ease it together, like that. And then, because you've taken it round 3 or 4 times, it's sort of like the knot takes itself actually around whatever you're tying together, like that. so you don't tend to get any sharp bends. And what you find if you start using natural cordage, one thing I do remember, but when you're using natural cordage or withies or vines and things like that, we use some of the vines over here, starting to, well, you can't call them vines, supplejack and stuff. It's putting a sharp kink into something that'll make it snap. If you can get it to curve nice and steady, it's often a lot better, a lot easier, a lot better to manage. Well, there we are. And like I say, the only other knots that I tend to use, which I don't intend to practice this week because I do them on a regular basis, it's the bushcrafty stuff I haven't done, is the fishing knots that I use. And basically I do just about everything I do, literally everything I do for fishing, I do with a tucked half blood, a 4-turn water knot, and a fisherman's knot. They're the only 3 knots I ever really use. I don't do anything special, I'm not into deep sea fish or anything like that, so I'm not using mega heavy line and fancy traces and all this lot, but those sort of like knots, they're the only knots I use. And the only reason I will use the fisherman's knot is because it gives you, the cord tends to come out in a straight line from the line, whereas a water knot, they both run, you put 2 pieces of line together and you join them with a water knot and they tend to lay together. And obviously the tucked half blood is used for attaching hooks or swivels or weights. So, but they're the only 3 I ever really use, and I've done I did a lot of fly fishing, I've done coarse fishing, I've done sea fishing, I do a bit of off the rocks here, not a lot. I haven't got bloody time, but that's what I tend to do a bit of that. So they're the 3 main knots I use. So if you're thinking about knots for fishing, there's bloody hundreds of them. Most of it is just clumping up the stairs. Right. So next job, I'm going to use my new knife. Well guys, welcome to day 6 of the tying knots, and from yesterday's bimbler 1, rata nil, and I've just filled a huge bloody big hole in the garden. God, it was like the Great Escape. God knows where it's put all the soil. There was a huge, 2 huge holes right next to each other. I've taken a huge bucket full of gravel to fill it in. Not one sign of dust or dirt. God knows what it's done with all the bloody muck.